It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like Grandma's meatballs or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen, to cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.
Hey everyone, this is the Almost World Podcast. Bringing to you mind-blowing interviews with guests from all over the world. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like the podcast, please support Elmo's World Podcast on Patreon. Your support is what helps the podcast improve more and more. 3. Welcome to Elmo's World Podcast. This is Elmo Adore, your host, and I have with me my friend Dave. Bro, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's up? So my name's Dave. I guess I'll leave my last name out of it. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., a place called Waldorf. I'm 33 years old. Had a bit of a rocky past, but I'm kind of like in recovery now. My big things are like mental health destigmatization and things like that. I got bipolar disorder and a personality disorder that, I don't know, I try and like correct misinformation, I guess. I don't know how else to say it.
And in terms of what your worldview right now, you told me earlier that you're more of an agnostic, right?
Yeah, but I'm open. I try and stay open to like every religion. I practice Zen, but yeah, I try to be open-minded. I think it's arrogant for any human being to say that they know for a fact about God, because like no one really can say they know. Like I don't see how they could. It's just it's too big for us. We can't even comprehend something like that. How could we say we know about it, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why I call myself an agnostic theist. You know, I don't say for certain that God exists, that I could prove it to you right now, but I still believe. And I have reasons to believe that maybe it's rationally, spiritually. It's a deep topic, but yeah, I completely agree with you. It is arrogant for someone to claim something like this, and they have to show for it.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking like, I guess I would say, setting aside not being able to know and not really, I would say I'm a theist too, but I kind of only under like certain definitions of God, because people define the concept a lot of different ways. And like I don't think there's an old dude sitting in the sky in an alternate universe like telling the lightning what to do. I think it's more like closer to like a pantheist type deal.
Okay. It's interesting. At least you're open to that, but why? Is it something because of that? You're more open to things that are spiritual, you know, like Buddhism and stuff, that you're able to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, finish your question.
Yeah. Please.
Okay. It's more that I try and be open to any possibility without like having my preconceived notions cutting off like different, also like closing my mind to things. Like I try and stay open-minded. I notice a lot of people, they get like emotionally attached to a certain belief, and they kind of let that attachment draw them towards things that, and then they close their minds off to possibilities. And it's like, if it's still an open possibility, you got to be open to it, in my opinion.
Exactly. But in terms of how, for example, people try to say that I would ultimately dismiss, for example, Christianity the same way I would dismiss the existence of a unicorn, because we have science already. We have all these accumulated knowledge of history and stuff to disprove miracles and a global flood and whatnot, and we have evolution and so they have arrived at a conclusion that we can dismiss all of these based on what we have already achieved.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Like, I think if you believe in God's non-existence, I think that's just as unfounded as believing in God's existence. Because if you think about it, no one knows what happened before the Big Bang, right? And so it's a possibility. No one knows where the so in the Big Bang, I guess I'll rewind in case not everyone is like familiar with it. In the Big Bang theory, they say all energy, matter, everything in the universe, space, time, all of that was compressed into a single gravitational singularity. It was like everything was just down to a point smaller than that, and that suddenly started expanding, and they call that the Big Bang, and that's where the universe came from. But no one knows where that energy singularity came from or why it started expanding. So you can't say for certain that God didn't do that, And like, okay, yeah, we have evolution and stuff. Maybe evolution is how God created the universe. Like, you get where I'm going with that?
Yeah, but what I meant by my question was that, for example, the biblical claim of a global flood, a lot of evangelicals, Protestants claim that there was a global flood, and people say that science disproves that we never had a global flood, and so that would disprove the whole religion that claims such things. But would you agree with that?
Sorry. No, I don't. Well, because I look at any culture's myths, I look at them as metaphorical, like allegorical things. I don't take them literally.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that you may take them not literally, but there are people who take those things literally, that actually believe those things exist. And so if you were even you disagree with them that take that account literally. And so there are belief systems that you could actually dismiss using by science.
I guess. Yeah. Well, let me think. That's kind of a bit of a loaded question. Yes, there are certain things, certain beliefs that I'm just like, nah, that's ridiculous, man. There's some that I would exclude, but I try and stay open as best I can. Obviously, you can't believe everything, or like nothing makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same. It's the same thing for a lot of atheists, though. What you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. What you're doing is that you're using the methodology in order to identify which belief systems make sense and don't make sense, the ones that are absurd and stuff. But simply that they are raising the standard a little higher than you are by establishing and grounding their beliefs on more scientific things. Would you agree? Would you agree with that?
Well, no, because believing in the non-existence of God is not scientific at all. Like, there's no scientific reason for it. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so if you have an open, like, say we're scientists and we're conducting an experiment, and we have a hypothesis, and to test this hypothesis, we design an experiment. It takes 2 weeks to finish the experiment. For those 2 weeks, while you're waiting for your results, you don't just assume your hypothesis is false until you get results. It's undecided up until that point. And right now, we have no proof to preclude the existence of a God, just like we have no we have no evidence to preclude the existence of a God, just like we have no evidence to verify the existence of a God. Like, it doesn't go either way.
I see your point there when it comes to that, but I'm not talking about the belief systems who have concepts of God and whether or not we can prove or disprove their beliefs in God. I'm just talking about belief systems that claim certain scientific absurdities. And that we can easily dismiss all these belief
I
systems that
misunderstood you.
believe in these absurdities.
Yeah,
So,
there are
like for
certain
example,
absurdities
if
we can, for
mhm.
like bread from the heavens coming down every day and feeding like the Hebrew people when they were in the desert. I think that's probably not how it happened exactly.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you're going to dismiss all the believers who actually take that biblical story literally, right?
I mean, I dismiss the
then
stories, but I mean,
but you're still going to consider some parts of their beliefs, I guess.
I consider
in
their beliefs
terms
valid even if I disagree with them. Let me put it that way.
Okay, but what would make them valid to you other than the fact that you may have contradictory or disagree or have disagreements with these people?
Well, okay, so my only reason for taking that stuff literally and dismissing the stuff as metaphorical is because I've never seen anything like that happen. But who knows, like 4,000 years ago, what the world was like. And who knows also, like, as things have been handed down to us, the stories get distorted. So it's like, I don't know. I consider the beliefs valid, though. The reason I respect people's beliefs and let them believe what they want and don't try and belittle them is because I know it makes sense to them, and a lot of it was, like, taught to them as a child. And it's like, I don't know, man. I try and be respectful of people's beliefs. I disagree.
So,
Like, I do.
I get it. I get it. But what you're saying, though, what you just said, though, in that reasoning, is that you're simply empathizing with their sort of delusion. You know, that you're saying that they were taught this way and stuff like that, and so you're just trying to understand and not disagree with them openly and stuff.
Well,
that's what
I mean. I'll tell
I'm
them.
getting.
I'll tell them I don't take this stuff literally. I'll tell them I take it metaphorical and
Okay.
don't see it the way they do. Like I'll let them know. But I try not to be like too dismissive. I don't know. But no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I do. There's certain things that I'm just like, no, that doesn't jive with me. I don't believe that. It doesn't. And so that's why, like, I'm kind of.
I guess that let me predict something though. What to me, what I perceive or try to look at what you're doing is that there are certain things that you actually could consider as valid, like for example the existence of God, maybe a spiritual realm of some sort. You know, you could maybe you
Yeah,
would
those could be possible. Definitely a spiritual
Yeah,
realm could be
exactly.
possible. Yeah.
Exactly, and so and you consider these beliefs, and so any belief system who might consider what you also believe, you're seeing some truth in them because you also believe, sort of consider that truth, but you don't consider the whole truth that they present because you also see the reasoning in that they could be distorted or corrupted or have been changed over time.
Like I said, I try not to dismiss it because it's possible that stuff really did happen. Like, I wasn't around 4,000 years ago. None of us were. And who knows, maybe like God really did come down from the heavens 6,000, 4,000 years ago and did interact with people, and then he just stopped doing it over time. Like, I mean, it's possible. I don't believe that's the case. It doesn't seem to be the case to me, but it is still possible. So, like, it's like, just because it doesn't make sense to me and just because I've never seen it doesn't mean it didn't happen, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes down to that, I would like to ask you about what your opinion in on is on the how people try to disprove or prove that God exists, because I think you seem to be on the fence there, like me, in terms of how it can be proven absolutely, right? But what would be your take on that?
Any means we have now, unless like God were to like come down from heaven himself and like reveal himself to the world, I don't think there's a way we could. How would you think we would disprove it or not? Like I've always considered it an unprovable thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I know a lot of atheists who positively say that and claim that God is not real. You know, there are no gods, because of maybe they use logic in that, they use their understanding of science and or like common sense and stuff. But I guess then that, but why do you disprove all of these or look at all of these proofs and disproofs as not enough or insufficient to carry the point that they're trying to make?
Usually when it comes to atheists talking about God being disproven, what they're doing is they're settling on one particular conception of God that's kind of ridiculous and then disproving something that's ridiculous, and they're not considering all the possible conceptions of God that aren't quite so ridiculous. So that's like the disproofs. And then usually when theists are saying they've proven God through some way or another, their evidence is subjective and circumstantial. It's like it's only true if you accept certain assumptions, and it's like a sort of circular logic type deal that occurs.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to that, for example, if you someone tries to prove to you that, or how about this, like if I say that my atheism is simply a lack of belief that God exists, you know, but I'm not saying I'm not saying that God doesn't exist or does exist. I'm just saying that I'm not going to consider it because nobody has proven it to me, you know. So so they live their lives as if there is no God because nobody has proven that there is no God. What would you say to those kinds of people?
Well, first of all, just to clear up some terminology, because the words get used differently.
Yeah.
So overseas, the way people would say it is like atheist doesn't believe in God, but doesn't necessarily believe God doesn't exist. Here in America, like the way most people understand it is an atheist believes God doesn't exist, and then an agnostic is the ones that don't believe or disbelieve. So when I said I was agnostic, that's where you just described my belief basically as atheism. So, but yeah, I neither believe nor disbelieve. Okay, so then, sorry, what was the question, man? I got distracted.
Yeah. Okay. So you neither believe nor disbelieve, but at least, but when you say that you're open to, for example, believing in a spiritual realm or an actual making the a plausibility that God could exist, that is sort of a consideration of theism, and I would not, and I would actually say that is sort of an agnostic theism if you take that route.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I would definitely identify as an agnostic theist.
Yeah, but what would you say tell agnostic atheists who don't necessarily say that God doesn't exist, but don't care about it that much?
I mean, I guess it would depend on the person. Everyone's different. I try not to think of people in categories or labels like that, but I would just tell them that to me, it seems like there's something bigger than us guiding all this, and it doesn't seem to be happening by chance, at least from my perspective. But I could also see how my perspective is skewed in my brain. Our memories distort things to make us to support our beliefs. So, like, I understand how, like, my own evidence for believing in God, my own reasons for for being a theist, they're not really they're not really valid to anyone but me. Like, I can't really prove it to anyone else.
Okay. But let me ask you about your do you have some sort of at least spiritual experiences or consideration, because you say that you might consider a pantheistic God. How would that be?
Well, when I say that, I mean I would believe that that God is literally the substance that everything is made from. And so hard to explain. Because like even just the word God, it's distorting what we're talking about. Really, like it's just like it's a way we shove the infinite in a box. When I say I believe in like a pantheistic God, I believe that the material, the substance of the universe, everything in it, is little pieces of God. But I also think God is like more than that too at the same time. Like, it's not just the universe, but it is the universe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've actually considered that one time ago, and it's sort of a monistic belief as well, right? That everything is part of God, and that you're God, we're part of God, and stuff like that. And that we're all just one consciousness in a one monad in a way. In a way,
yeah, but I think that's oversimplifying it a bit. Like, I think there's like the collective God thing that's us, but then we are also there as individuals. I think in Hinduism, they have these concepts, Brahman and Atman. I think those kind of describe what I believe pretty well, where there's like Brahman, which is the thing that's everything, and then there's Atman, which is the individualized selves of, like, so it's two sides of the same coin.
Okay. And if you believe that, what sort of implementations do you make in your life to because you consider all of these?
That's a deep question. I try to, one, understand myself and the world around me as best as I can as a way of understanding God better. I try to help other people as best as I can, because hypothetically they are extensions of myself. So their well-being is my well-being, if you think. All right. Sorry. So what was the last thing you heard? I don't know where we got lagged out at.
Yeah, you're looking at life with a better perspective.
Okay. I'll just, like, what was the last words you heard me say? Do you remember?
Yeah, you look at life and consider then how God would want you to consider life.
All right, so yeah, I try to understand like myself and the world around me as best as I can. I do a lot of time meditating on things like the self, like who am I, what is my inner self really like. That's just a big part of Zen Buddhism. I also try to see how other people are sort of extensions of, well, not so much extensions of myself, but they are like, there's a piece of me in everyone I meet, I guess I should say. And anytime I see someone, the things I like and dislike are based on like what I see of myself reflected back at me. So I try and remember that when I like someone, what I really like is part of myself that I see in them, and when I don't like someone, what I don't like in them is really part of myself that I don't like about myself that I see in them. And so I try and remember that people are extensions of myself and treat them as best as I can without, one, enabling their toxic behavior that's going to get them hurt in the long run, and two, with like protecting myself at the same time.
Cool. But I want to ask though, what got you into Zen Buddhism?
That's a long story. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so my whole life, starting from when I was like 11 or 12, I've had a lot of run-ins with the law, problems with drug addiction, things like that. Eventually, when I was 25, my father committed suicide, and that really like made me take a look at myself and see that the way I had been living wasn't quite right. So from there, trying to get peace from that, I sort of started going to, like, I was always sort of a spiritual person, but that kicked off like a sort of quest for redemption, I guess you could say, where I was like, I knew that I didn't treat him the way I wanted, the way if if he can remember things after death, he doesn't remember me the way I want to be remembered. And so like that kind of made me start looking into Buddhism, and then through Buddhism, someone introduced me to Taoism, and then through Taoism, like Buddhism and Taoism merged together are Zen, and so that's kind of how I ended up there. But yeah, it's I've sort of always been on like a sort of spiritual pursuit thing. It was just like my father's death that opened my eyes to the error of my ways, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. And I've always been curious what the basic beliefs of Zen Buddhism is, because I've only encountered it in school and I've read some articles, but I still don't know anything about it. Could you elaborate it for us?
I'll do my best. Anyone who wants to learn about it, I suggest like looking for yourself and talking to lots of people and getting lots of different perspectives on it. Don't take my word for it. Exactly, because I mean, I have spent a lot of time practicing it, but I'm not like an authority on the subject at all. But basically, so I guess I'll start with Buddhism. So in Buddhism, there's this dude. He actually lived. They know for a fact he lived. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. I might have pronounced that wrong, sorry. But he lived in what's modern day Nepal. Back then he was some kind of noble or prince in a family. He growing up, he lived a very sheltered life. Everything was laid out to keep him happy at all times, and he was sort of like shielded from the suffering of the world until he saw, let me see if I can get this right. A commoner that was sick, an old man who was like getting on in years, and then a dead body, freshly deceased, and that made him aware of the suffering in the world and made him aware of the problem of human suffering. So he went around and trained with all these like yoga masters and stuff from back in the day in ancient India. Didn't find the answers, like living like an ascetic lifestyle. Didn't find the answers, obviously, in hedonism or anything like that. He eventually came up with, sat down and meditated, became enlightened, and that's when he became the Buddha. Is when he became enlightened, and that's all Buddha. All Buddha means is someone who's awake. So anyway. His first teachings were they're called the Four Noble Truths. One, the first noble truth is that there's suffering in the world. Two is that the suffering has a source and it's within ourselves. Three is that if it has a source, it can be stopped. If there's a source within ourselves, we can stop it too. And then four is that the way to stopping suffering is through what's called the Eightfold Path or the Middle Way. It goes both ways depending on which scripture you look at. I'm just gonna skip over. So basically I'll just say the middle way is finding the middle point, the options that account for all, like say, like you got a duality and there's two poles. The middle way tries to account for both sides without jumping to either extreme. So it's like avoiding extremes. I don't want to call it centrism because even centrism can become an extreme in a way. It's really confusing, man. So that's Buddhism. Zen is a Chinese adaptation of Buddhism. Buddhism started in India, like I said, traveled down the Silk Road to China. When it got to China, it met up with Confucianism and Taoism and the Chinese philosophies. And one of the things that came out of it was Buddhism and Taoism got fused into one. So in Zen, they take like a lot of things. Okay, so in Taoism, they talk about how words are inadequate and nothing can really, no scripture or anything like that can really suffice to tell you the truth. You have to live it through experience. That's one of the main tenets of Buddhism. Here, I got something my teacher wrote that I could look up, but I don't want to risk crashing the call. But basically, it's just learning. Like, yes, you look at scripture, you don't exclude anything, but you got to remember that scripture is just words and words. Nothing can really describe the ultimate truth. Like the real fact of the matter, the real, like, matters of God, I guess you could say, we can't put them into words. They transcend human language. They transcend human thought. So it's like the inadequacy of words, not relying on scriptures or anything like that, looking in ourselves to know our own true nature and experiencing directly are like the main goals of Zen. Some other big things in like Buddhist philosophy that are probably worth noting, they believe in something that's translated as non-self, but it's more complicated than there is no self. It's more like the self is part of an interconnected web of everything is interwoven. That's the belief I was just talking about. That's part of Zen, and really all Buddhism to an extent. There's a belief called sunyata, which is basically everything is made up from the constituent parts around it, and nothing has its own independent self-nature. Like, everything is defined by the things around it, so nothing can truly be like, okay, so myself, I am a dude, but when I start looking at like the properties that make me up or make my social self up, all of these things are things that, like, they came from my parents, or they came from the society I was raised in, or they came from the school that I was taught by. Like, none of these ideas came into my head none of these ideas came into my head on my own. So really none of it can really be said to be part of me because it all came from outside myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so like sunyata and anatta, non-self, are kind of tied into each other. I guess the only other big part of Buddhist philosophy that I want to call out is they have this thing called the two truths doctrine, which is basically there's two forms of truth. There's the ultimate truth, which describes reality as it is, and then there's conventional truth, which is only true by social convention. So to give you an idea what I mean, the ultimate truth is my car is just a bunch of littler parts. There is really no car there, just a bunch of nuts and bolts. But we still call them all one thing, a car, by social convention, just because it's simpler than not. You know, like, we refer to it as one thing even though it's not. So that's so the ultimate truth is the car isn't really there. It's just a bunch of smaller parts. The conventional truth is there's a car there. I don't know if I explained that well, but
yeah. I really admire how you talk for so long about that, and I got most of it, I guess. That, and I guess the ultimate goal of Zen Buddhism is oneness, I guess. Which is the
that is a way of putting it. It's more self-knowledge and direct experience. It's so hard to put into words. Like, that's why I said, if anyone's really interested, you should just forget everything I just said and go look into it for yourself. But the goal is, I guess, achieving what they call satori, which is like a sort of non-dual perception, seeing how all things are really one in a sense. But it's so hard to put into words, and I don't even want to try to do it. But yeah, I guess you could say oneness is a big part of it. It's more liberation from suffering is the goal, and realizing oneness is the method to do that.
Yes, I guess then that the Zen Buddhism, as you said, it merged the concepts of Buddhism and Taoism, where Taoism is has the oneness of the duality, which is like the yin and yang oneness, and then the Buddhism part is the elimination of suffering, especially through self knowledge and liberating oneself from this.
That's one way of putting it, but I tried. It's way more complicated than that. Like, there's a lot of overlap. There was a lot of overlap between the two schools of thought before they encountered each other, to the point that when the Chinese saw the Buddhist teachings, they thought Lao Tzu, the guy that wrote the Tao Te Ching, they thought because in their mythology, Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching and then went west. The Chinese, when Buddhism finally came over from India, they thought, oh, well, Lao Tzu went west, taught in India, and became known as the Buddha over here, and these teachings are just his teachings coming back to us. Like, there's a lot of overlap between the two schools of thought. So I think, that's a pretty accurate description. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on suffering before Buddhism got introduced to China, and the whole idea of like the non-dual duality of yin and yang, that was more developed in China before the two schools of thought met. So what you said is like, it's not entirely wrong, but it's not the whole truth either, I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah, and to me though, it's really hard to, I guess, grasp, for example, Indian or Chinese philosophy, because I may be adjacent of an adjacent country to those, because I'm in Asia, but because I was born in a mostly Western colonized culture. Yeah, I'm not familiar with those concepts, especially because when you're born with like trying to with established logical reasons, and you can't really apply logic in Eastern philosophy.
Yeah, no, it's because it's there's paradox built into it. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I've studied it and done a lot of meditating on it and stuff. I know enough to know that I'm not qualified to explain it to anyone. So.
And but I think the real question for me is that, I am a person who believes in rationality, but I could also consider irrationalism as a way to actually arrive at a truth. It's not something that is impossible. But when it comes to like maybe considering, for example, Taoism or Buddhism, I would be open to these ideas, but it would take a lot for me to even consider them and actually integrate them.
Yeah,
into
I
my
get what you're
life.
saying. Well, because like I said, it's an element, especially in Taoism, it's an element of it all that it's paradoxical by its nature. It doesn't lend itself to logical deconstruction at all.
Yeah, but my question is that what made you come to these beliefs systems? Would it be that it's a sort? Would you agree that it's a sort of a therapy, I guess?
Yes, definitely. Like it started out, I started practicing Buddhism because the teachings were practical, like they were effective in my life. They made me, when I followed them, I lived better, got better things out, felt better. And then it just kind of built into, through reading the philosophy, I picked up a lot of the more paradoxical stuff. And really, once you've spent some time with it and molded around, it's not that it's entirely like nonsensical. Like there's a method to it. Like there's a pattern to it. It makes sense once you figure it out. It's hard to wrap your mind around at first.
I guess then that there's also an element of American pragmatism happening there that I don't care
Yeah,
if it's not true as long as it's beneficial, and it is
yeah,
beneficial. I think
yeah.
it's been with us for a very long time with humanity, more than like I don't know 3,000 years for
Something about that.
yeah.
Buddhism, I think, was about 2,700 years ago. I forget the exact dates. Taoism was the Warring States period in China, so also about 2,700 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. And I wanted to ask you because in terms of your some for someone who has experienced a lot of trauma in their life, a lot of struggle and suffering. When it comes to that, when you try to apply Zen Buddhism and actually liberate yourself from the suffering, what was the mental process going on through your mind at
The
those
main,
times?
the most freeing thing for me, the most freeing realization, and it's something you kind of got to like see it for yourself. Even me explaining it to you, it's not really going to click until you see it yourself firsthand. Is that um, there is a reason for the suffering. Like without the suffering, there could be no positivity. Like the suffering is actually the basis for all things that we feel are good. Because okay, say if there was no such thing as cold, you wouldn't know what hot was because you'd have nothing to compare it to, right? It's the same way with suffering, where if we had never felt bad, if we never felt the absence of joy, we wouldn't know what joy was because we'd have to know. We'd have nothing to compare it to because we'd always be happy. It would just be we wouldn't have a word for it. It would just be the way things are. And then also, we don't grow, we don't expand our minds, we don't really thrive unless we're pushed by some sort of negative force. Like if we're allowed to just sit doing nothing, never have to work, never have any adversity at all, we don't really learn from that at all. We'll stay stagnant. Like the hardships and the negativity sort of drive our upward growth, and it's ultimately that upward growth that is what we find fulfilling in life. So there needs to be some sort of like counter pressure to life, and so I know it doesn't really make all suffering make sense. I know there's a lot of people that go through a lot of unfair, injustices, and they didn't really do anything to bring it on themselves. So I know that doesn't make it all perfect, but it's still like having that realization, at least for my personal suffering, it made the stuff I went through make sense. It's like, what was the reason for all this happening to me? And it's just because if life wasn't hard, I'd still be 13 years old, you know?
I see. I guess then, when it comes down to that, you rationalize with yourself that suffering was necessary for me to be who I am now, to be how strong I am. Would that
Yeah.
be the case? Would that okay?
I don't know if I'd
Okay.
consider myself strong, but that's, yeah, as strong as I am, like, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I think that's one of the things that some theists will argue for as a solution for the problem of evil, in a way that evil it was necessary for us to appreciate or what the good that we have, but I don't know if it's a good argument, but you could actually see that argument in the book of Job by one of Job's
Yeah.
friends, a young man named Elihu who made that. But anyway, I want to ask you another question, which is that other than Zen Buddhism, the Eastern philosophy is really open to considering other philosophies, right? Like Shintoism and maybe some sort of Mahayana and stuff. As a
Well,
Zen
Mahayana and
Buddhist,
Shintoism are both parts of Zen. And so the history of Zen, so it went from India to China. China is where Mahayana Buddhism developed. Zen grew out of Mahayana. Then in China it was called Chan. When it went to Japan, it mixed with Shintoism and became Zen. So Shintoism and Mahayana are both like subsumed into Zen.
I see. So in a way, Zen Buddhism is sort of the I get the child of almost all Eastern philosophies. Could you say that? At least an offshoot, maybe.
It definitely touches all the major Eastern philosophies in some way, because Buddhism came out of the Vedanta tradition in a way, and then because Shintoism got taken up into it, but it's more than that too. I don't want to say it's just that, but yeah, it has absorbed a lot of. It is like a conglomerate that's absorbed a lot of Eastern schools of thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, in terms of, let's say, well, for example, what truth it might actually bring in a naturalistic or scientific sense. You know, for example, for like how Christians would view Genesis and look at actually like the Big Bang as like God saying let there be light and stuff. You know, it's explained in a scientific way. You know, do you also apply that in Eastern or in Eastern philosophy or in Zen Buddhism, where, for example, this sort of thinking, this cognitive thought process could actually be some sort of psychological and medical therapy? You know, is that the case?
Definitely, Zen can be a medical therapy. It actually is already. If I don't know how much you know about psychology therapy, but there's this one a mixture of cognitive behavioral therapy and Zen Buddhism called dialectical behavioral therapy. They use it for treating borderline personality disorder and stuff. So yes, a lot of it is therapeutic. The stuff about no self and things like that, there's actually a lot of like neurobiological evidence that that's the case, like that ourselves are really just mental constructs and not really there. And that, so yeah, I definitely think there is a lot of good scientific reasons to be interested in Zen, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say you're a Zen Buddhist, you know, and it's not really a strict religion that says that it's the ultimate truth, you know, I think that would be the case. But so in terms of how you view, let's say, Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or other religions, what would be your take on them? Like you might consider them as having truths as well?
Yeah, I consider every religion. I look at every religion like it has some shard of the truth. I look at it as like some part of the truth and some distortion of the truth. Any religion, even Zen, no matter what I look at, I remember that a lot of it is subject to my interpretation. Not all of what's made it down through history was supposed to be there at the beginning. Like, different people have held the pen through different times, and there's been lots of edits made over time. And so I look at it like every religion has some truth and some distortion mixed in there. I definitely think there are a lot of useful teachings in, like, I've read the Bible. I've looked into like Sufism and forms of Islam. I think there are definitely good reasons for following it. Like, I think they do have therapeutic uses. With any religion, I think it's up to the person, the individual, what they do with it. That's what determines how healthy or unhealthy it is. I don't think any religion at its core is good or bad until a person takes it and makes it good or bad.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I guess then that you're probably saying that look, I see some truths in your religion, but I have my specific reasons as to why I won't believe the whole truth of it, and this would be a rational or at least an honest analysis of, like, maybe scripture, the history as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I can definitely see the truth in it. I can see the benefits of following it. But and even with Zen, I can see things that I'm like, the parts that that don't really like click with me. And it's like, are really like they're truths, but they're truths situationally, kind of like conventional truths, like I was talking about earlier. And I think every religion has those built into it. And I think they all talk about ultimate truth, but they all also have like some conventional truths worked in. And so it's really like you got to look at things in the context of the time and place where they arose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk more about what you mean by. Is it okay if you discuss how being a bipolar, having a bipolarity? I don't know how
Okay,
to
so
say it.
bipolar disorder, what it is, it's a cycle of mood. People think it's mood swings and stuff, and that can be a part of it, but that's not the main thing. The main part of bipolar is a cycle of mood states where I'll feel perfectly normal like I am now, I'll be fine. And then without medication, I'll eventually become what they call manic. And what mania is, that's when we get the mood swings, with racing thoughts, delusions of grandeur. In my case, it progresses into like full-on psychosis where the delusions get so far out there that I just completely break with reality. And then so after that manic episode is followed by a depressive crash. And that's all those things you'd normally associate with depression: lack of motivation, pessimistic outlook, lots of self-loathing built into it. And so it's that cycle of going from highs to being manic for a month, 2 months, 3 months, a week. Like it changes from person to person how long it is. But cycling from manic to depressive and going through that cycle of ups and downs, that's what bipolar is. Yeah.
Well, I have like some understanding of psychology, but I want to ask you from your experience, because you're the one who's able to tell what it means to have bipolar disorder. Would it be the case that you are the one in control of your emotions, or it's simply a biological case, or is it that sometimes you are able to determine whether you want to be to have these emotion or not?
No, there's definitely times where I've wanted to not be manic, because when I get manic, I can't sleep for like days on end, and I'll be laying there wanting to sleep but can't. There is definitely, I have some control over it, and I need to be like aware of what's going on in my mind in order to keep it under control as best as I can. But I can't control it without medication. No, it's there's definitely like a biological root to it, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to that, we are, because we humans identify our emotions as part of our being, ourself. Would you say that you have a specific, you have a soul that is you, or you're just your material body with a consciousness?
Well, I think a consciousness would be a soul. I kind of like both. When you say one, I think they kind of imply the other. Like I think they're one and the same. So it's like a human body with a consciousness. You've just renamed the soul consciousness. But yeah, I believe we have a soul if you go by that definition I just gave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you have this consciousness, and your consciousness is really something then that is a product of atoms, it's reacting to the chemicals in your brain and stuff. So would that mean that ultimately what we have as emotions, as thoughts, are not really freely ours? Would you say?
Yeah, that's actually a big teaching in Zen, is that like you kind of learn to disidentify with your thoughts and emotions and see how they're not yours. Yeah.
I see. And so, but how do you disidentify with that?
That's lots of meditation, I guess, like looking inward at yourself, introspection, and seeing how the thoughts and emotions come and go, and none of them are permanent, and they're all transient, and like they are arising within you, but they're not actually you. They're more like something you're experiencing happening to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to ask, like, when it comes to having a bipolar disorder, it's probably since you were young, right? Would you say that it has affected your life quality in that it prevents you to be the optimal and maximal best you could be?
Um, well, I wouldn't say that, no. It's made it hard to function the way a normal person does, but I wouldn't say it's held me back from being the best version of myself. I guess it's held me back from being successful in a classical sense, but I don't judge myself by that metric, so I wouldn't say it stopped me from being the best version of me. I think it's defined my experience, and because it's defined my experience, it defines who I am. Like, and I wouldn't take any part of my experience and try and cut any part of it out or say any part was worth more than the other. Like, I had to go through everything I went through to get to where I am now. And I sort of like where I am now. So I wouldn't say it stopped me from being the best version of me, but it definitely has held me back. Because like a lot of different things will happen. I'll get manic and just quit my job on a whim because I'm not. When I get into that mindset, I don't think things through before I do them. I just, because I have delusions of grandeur, I just assume that everything I think is right. And so when I think I should quit my job because I'll find another one tomorrow, and so I'll quit a job like that. I'll also slip into depressions and like lay in bed for 2 weeks straight and just not talk to anyone or call anyone and only get up to use the bathroom because I have to. And so I've lost jobs that way. I've had psychotic episodes. So yes, it's definitely been adversity attached to it, but like adversity isn't necessarily a bad thing, like I was saying earlier.
Okay. And Dave, I think that how you told me your answer, I think that it's something that not a lot of people can say, and it's something that I would say that you have wisdom attained from Buddhism, and it's really something that I wish I could have, because there are things in my life that I wish that never happened, but I guess that a part of it is acceptance in not just in for like maybe it's more than just be accepting that it's made me stronger in a sense, but I think that a better reason for accepting the trouble and the bad times of life is that it was me who did those things, who passed through all those. So I would say it's more of like the story of my life, and that life ultimately has conflict, it has a plot, and in our story we are the hero, and it depends on us what happens, whatever the setting may provide us. That's one thing that I look at in my life, and how I get through the struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, like, I wouldn't say I'm really all that wise. Like, compared to most people my age, like, I'm probably average. And a lot of it just comes with time and experience. Like, you're a lot younger than me, so, like, obviously you've been through less. You're not going to be able to speak as confidently as I am. But, yeah, man, I wouldn't consider myself wise. Definitely Buddhism has brought me a lot of peace. It's definitely what any wisdom I do have, it's come through – I wouldn't say specifically Buddhism. Buddhism's the one I look into the most, but I've looked into every religion, and just like trying to get in touch with my spirituality and know something greater than myself. That's where, like, anything worth knowing, that's where I learned it. You definitely seem like you're a lot more put together than I was at your age. I was like an ignorant little shit when I was 20, man. You have no idea. But yeah, man. Yeah, I would not consider me wise. I'm the exact opposite. I just talk a good game.
Okay. Well, I would say added humility there. But other than that, I want to say that it's been a great conversation with you, Dave. And I want to drive this into one last question. Being that person that you are, you've encountered Zen Buddhism and seen it as a great, in a way, therapy for life. But also being an agnostic and considering honestly your views on religion and having experienced through your life the struggles of having a bipolar disorder, what would be the message or the best advice you could give to someone who's struggling right now with basically about life and its adversities?
Don't give up. Try and stay positive, even though it's really hard to do sometimes. I don't know. I really don't think I'm qualified to give anyone advice, man. Yeah, just keep your head up, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it like, for me, it got better. I've never seen it not get better. If you really work for it, it can get better. Be careful, not like people get in their own heads and have like a lot of self-defeating thoughts. I know myself especially. Try and be careful. Like, don't be your own worst enemy. Don't be the one that drags yourself down. Like, try and like bolster yourself up. Be positive, and just, even when it seems hopeless, the hopelessness is just part of a future that's like imaginary to you, right? And things are never as bad in the real world as they are in your imagination, or at least for me, this has been the case. So just remember that you can't see the future. So, that's so hard to put in words. Yeah, no, I'm not qualified to give advice, man. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Okay, well, Dave, it's been awesome talking to you, bro. Thank you for your time, and I hope that we can have more conversations, man. Bye.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So that's the end of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your host, Elmo Ador Jr., and thank you for listening in, and please subscribe. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow this. Please. Thanks.
It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like grandma's meatballs, or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen, to cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.